Ah, this meeting is being live streamed.
Yeah, but it's not.
Oh, really? No? By staying in this meeting. Oh, so that's the Zoom thing.
It's kind of working it, but
No, you're there.
oh, really?
Yep. We're there on YouTube now.
All right.
I think people
Hello.
can hear us.
Awesome. All right. So, hello. Sorry for the delay. we had quite a few technical problems today. So, welcome to RetireJapan TV, the show where we talk about personal finance, investing, retirement, and life in Japan. How are we doing, Daniel?
We're okay now. I don't know what happened there, but thank you people in the chat for being patient.
Awesome. All right. So apparently only 10% of podcasts make it past the third episode. And this is RetireJapan TV 4. So congratulations. We made it to the top, what was it? The top decile. Awesome.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ben, congratulations are also in order for 5 years of the Monday read.
Yeah, right? I had no idea. It popped up on Facebook. The post I made when I came up with the Monday read idea in 2018. So yeah, 5 years of boring people with my
very consistent. So for people who are not familiar, Ben does not only a blog post every Monday, but also the newsletter as well. And 5 years consistent posting and sending. That's impressive.
That's a lot of links.
Yeah.
Cool. It's weird because it's easier to post something when you have to do it on a schedule.
Right.
Somehow, if it was just, let's make a post every so often, I don't think I'd have made it past a few weeks.
Right.
But because it has to be done by 11 o'clock on Monday, because that's when the newsletter goes out. It really keeps you on track. So I think there's a lesson there for personal finance, for fitness, for anything. You need that deadline, I think, just to keep you going.
Yeah. Well,
speaking about fitness and things, how did you do for chocolates this year?
Mother-in-law gave me a very nice little box. She's very sweet. Does it every year, and then consequently, White Devil do the same thing. Darling wife as well. But I think I might not have done quite as well as you.
Ah, yes. Well, I got so I got something from my wife, of course. I got something from my granddaughter, although they were all sick, so it wasn't homemade this time. Normally they make something for me, but it was a nice little package of like cookies and things. I got something from a coworker, quite a nice kind of cake thing. I got something from one of my students who I love, like really cool junior high school student. And I got something from one of the students' parents, which was this silver box. It looks like a cigar case or something, like quite heavy. And one side, it actually felt like an Apple product. That's the level of kind of quality design and manufacturing in the box. So I kind of opened it, and there was like 5 layers of tissue paper that you had to kind of cut open before you got to the kind of explanation paper.
Right.
And that had like 9 kind of little chocolates on it, kind of ganache and things. It's a French company. And I got past that to the actual chocolates.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what I'm going to get this lady for White Day to make up for this. It's terrible. She does this every year. Apparently I did some research, and this thing is not actually available in Japan.
Wow.
The manufacturer doesn't have a presence here. It was some kind of limited collaboration for, Valentine's that she obviously... This woman is like a grandmaster of shopping. Like a 9th Dan black belt in shopping or something. Wow. So
that's a high bar.
I have no chance.
You got something that you can't actually get in Japan. Wow.
Exactly. So that's always fun.
So have you eaten them yet? What are they like?
I didn't dare.
No.
I'm going to share them with my wife. I'm going to cut each. They're quite small. They're about 1-inch squares.
Right.
9 1-inch squares of different. I'm going to cut them in half, I think, and share them with my wife and see how we do. Yeah. So We have a guest today, apparently.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do. I think last
We're going to
time
be
you
joined by well, we tried to get a human guest, but
but our first choice was this particular guest, right?
yeah, this is very much our backup guest. Let's see if they show up, eh? Like,
I hope so. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, that's a good sign. Right. Now then. So should we ask for an introduction, do you think?
Yes.
Sure. In ChatGPT, a conversational artificial intelligence language model created by OpenAI. I was trained on a massive data set of text from the internet, which allows me to understand and generate natural language responses to a wide range of questions.
Well, thank you very much, ChatGPT. So that's not super interesting. Yeah. Still talking in the background there. So I think we've got a few questions prepared for our special guest, haven't we? And so
we have. I mean, I've been playing with it, on the side, and I found. For me at least, I tried to use it to make a presentation for me when I went to Kyushu. I went to Kyushu to give some talks for Retire Japan, and I got ChatGPT to make one of the talks for me, but it wasn't very good. Like it wasn't particularly good with Japanese kind of content. So
yep.
I felt good because my job was safe.
Safe.
I can't be replaced yet by the AI. But for making educational materials. So I write textbooks and things as well. And it's been really good for that, because you can iterate, right? You can say, write something, and then it writes it. And then you go, now write it again in at a 10th grade level.
Right.
Or write it in 100 words, or, make some questions based on what it's just really good for like just making things. So have you tried it at all?
Yes, I have got mixed results. I find the results are either a bit sort of bland and generic, or occasionally just wrong. So I like Seiko watches, and so I was trying to get it to write an article for me about the differences between the 7S26B and the 7S26C, and it got it wrong. I couldn't believe it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Have you used it to code at all?
No, I haven't. I use it a lot, quite a lot for image generation, which is fun. But for code, I've heard it's really good, and something's just stopping me. I'm like nervous about it mixing up its code with my code, and then I won't be able to understand when I come back to it in a year's time what it was doing. Yeah, I need to, but
interesting. Okay.
Not just
right here. Today we're going to put it to the test on RetireJapan TV. We're going to ask it some questions, and actually, it keeps changing the answers.
Yes.
So when you ask the question, it changes. Obviously, it's it's an evolving model. So we did a test run earlier in the day, but I don't think it's going to give us the same answer. So let's see.
Yeah.
So the idea is we're going to ask ChatGPT, and then we're going to kind of judge the quality of its response. So
yeah.
What was our first question?
Okay. Is Japan a good place to live? And we're asking it in 100 words or less.
Yes, Japan can be a great place to live for many people. It has a rich culture, unique cuisine, and a high standard of living. The country is known for its safety, cleanliness, and efficiency, with reliable public transportation and convenient access to healthcare services. Additionally, Japan has a strong economy, advanced technology, and is home to many globally recognized companies. However, like any country, there are also some challenges to living in Japan, such as the high cost of living in major cities and the potential language barrier for non-Japanese speakers. Ultimately, whether Japan is a good place to live will depend on your personal preferences and circumstances.
It will depend on your personal preference. That's a bit of a cop-out,
yes,
isn't
say
it?
that about pretty much everything, can you?
So what did you think of that answer?
Pretty good. Again, quite sort of general, but I would agree with it. So what did it say? Safety, cleanliness, efficiency, good public transportation, definitely. Convenient access to healthcare services, yes, I think so. Although maybe that depends on which region you live in. Strong economy, yeah. advanced technology? Yes, although you still get, I think reporters have to send questions to the government via fax still, or something like that. Yeah, the challenges are the high cost of living in major cities.
I don't think that's true. You know, actually, I found 3 things in there that I didn't agree with. Although I'm kind of nitpicking, it was an okay answer, but I'm not sure about the strong economy bit, particularly for workers. I mean, we're going to be talking about this later on, but you know, it's not a particularly great place to be a young person entering the workforce in terms of, you know, salary and conditions and so on. And the economy, you know, we've got the weak yen and we've got kind of stresses on the economy. I don't know if it's a strong economy now. I'd maybe argue with high standard of living for the same reason. So lots of people are struggling at the moment with you know, inflation and so on, which we're going to talk about later. And yeah, I wouldn't say there's a high cost of living in cities. I think Japan is a very affordable place. Even in cities, so even in Tokyo, you can find accommodation for, you know, 30,000 yen, 40,000 yen a month, you know, for a single person, if you're willing to live in a, you know, and that's unimaginable in most major cities, other global major cities. So yeah, that would be my nitpicking there. So again, it's given us a fairly good generic answer that where there's some slight details that are perhaps wrong.
Yes, yeah,
but not too bad.
Okay.
So that was a pretty general question. Let's ask some specific questions.
Right, specific, and this is about Nenkin, the insurance system, pension system in Japan. Should people pay into Nenkin in Japan? Again, in 100 words or less. We want to keep the answers short.
Yes, people living in Japan are generally required to pay into the national pension system, known as Nenkin. This is a social insurance program that provides benefits to Japanese citizens and foreign residents who have lived in Japan for a certain period of time. The system is designed to provide financial support to individuals after they retire, as well as to those who become disabled or lose a family member. While it is possible to opt out of the pension system, it is generally recommended that people pay into it to ensure they have access to these benefits in the future.
That answer is actually different to the one we listened to.
Yeah, and not as good. So earlier in the day, we tried this out, and the answer was pretty perfect to the extent that I thought it might have been reading it from the Nenkin website. But this one's wrong. So, I mean, it's slightly wrong. So it's generally okay. However, you don't get Nenkin if you've lived in Japan for a certain amount of time. You get Nenkin if you've paid in for a certain amount of time. So that's one nitpick there. You need to pay in for 10 years or 120 months in order to vest, to qualify to receive a pension. And it's...
One second. Does that mean somebody could come live in Japan for 9 years and then move out of Japan, and that money is just a present to the government and it's gone?
There is a refund system. So if you leave Japan as a non-Japanese person, so you're a non-Japanese citizen, you leave Japan having paid into Nenkin, you can choose to have some of your payments refunded.
Okay.
I think you get up to 5 years worth back.
Right. Okay.
So in your example, if you left after 9 years, you'd get 5 years back and 4 years would disappear into the ether.
Right.
Which is better than nothing.
It is. Yeah.
However, if there's a chance you might come back and work again, for most people, it might make sense to just leave it in the Nenkin system and then come back and get your 10th year and then qualify for a pension.
Right. Okay.
Once you've qualified for a pension, you can claim that worldwide, and you're no longer allowed to get a refund. Instead, you must accept your pension in retirement. So. Okay. So that's only an option in that gray area from 1 year, kind of 1 year to 9 years and 11 months.
Yeah.
When you can get the refund.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no worries. And the second point, it said it's possible to opt out of Nenkin. I mean, it is, but only if you're in financial difficulties or you have very low income. That's the only reason, or if you're a student, a full-time student. Those are the only reasons you're allowed to opt out of Nenkin. So yeah, you can, but it's not like it's possible. You know, I can't opt out of Nenkin. So,
Yeah.
So
good.
Cool.
Thank
so
you.
interesting. The answer got worse. It degraded.
Through the day. It's getting tired. Right. The next one is about the NISA. So does it know about NISA? And in particular, does it know the new changes that are coming up from next year, from 2024? And I'm not sure if it's going to know about what's happening in the future. What does it say?
Starting in January 2024, the NISA, Nippon Individual Savings Account, system in Japan will be expanded to allow for increased investment limits and a wider range of investment options. Specifically, the maximum annual contribution limit will be increased from the current 2 million yen to 5 million yen, and investors will be able to invest in a wider range of products, including stocks and bonds issued overseas. Additionally, the new rules will allow investors to hold multiple NISA accounts at different financial institutions, giving them more flexibility and choice when it comes to managing their investments.
There we go. Thank you.
Oh dear. Oh dear, ChatGPT. Oh dear. I'm glad that you're not giving financial advice. Okay, that was completely wrong. Quite shockingly so. So it said, yeah, the NISA limit's expanding next year. Yes, that's true. It said it's going from 1.2 to 1.5 million yen. That is not true. It's actually going from 1.2 to 3.6 million yen. So next year's NISA rules are everything we've always wanted. It's amazing. I think we've talked about it before, but yeah, it's not 1.5 million. It's 3.6. We won't be getting a wider range of products. It's the same as the current ordinary NISA. And you certainly are not allowed to have multiple NISA accounts. Each person is only allowed to have one. So, yeah, nice try, ChatGPT, but you won't be taking my job anytime soon.
One of the answers it gave me earlier on when I was testing it was it said the time limit would be reduced from 10 years from 20 years to 10 years.
Wow.
I don't think that's quite correct either, is it?
Yeah, so in fact we're gonna get rid of the time limit entirely, which is great. That's exactly what we wanted for a long-term investment account. So anything you put in NISA is tax-free until you sell it, basically.
Yeah. Now let's say NISA is far too safe and sensible an investment, and we want to do something a little bit more exciting.
Bit more spicy. Bit more spicy.
Bit more spicy. Let's ask it about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Is that a good investment or not so much?
Bitcoin is a decentralized digital currency that has gained popularity as an investment in recent years. One potential advantage of investing in Bitcoin is the potential for high returns due to its volatility and limited supply. Additionally, Bitcoin is not tied to any government or financial institution, which some investors see as a benefit. However, there are also significant risks associated with Bitcoin as an investment. Its value can be highly volatile, and it is not backed by any physical asset, making it a high-risk investment. Furthermore, the lack of regulation and potential for fraud or theft can make investing in Bitcoin risky. Ultimately, whether Bitcoin is a good or bad investment will depend on an individual's risk tolerance and investment goals.
I can't argue with any of that. That sounded great.
Oh, okay.
Which ties in with my kind of view of my impression of ChatGPT, which is basically it's mostly kind of going off English language data or you know the whatever it's looking at. It's you know, word bank or whatever. Right. And so anything that's in America is probably going to be more accurate than stuff in Japan, which is a bit more esoteric.
Yes. One thing I do want to pick up, it says Bitcoin is not tied to any government or financial institution. I think the creation of it wasn't, but now governments across the world are either introducing regulation or they're introducing regulation on financial providers so that you eventually, their aim is, I think you will have to go through a financial institution to get or to hold or to get or transact Bitcoin.
Okay, so, but you can always get around that though, can't you?
You can, do it from wallet to wallet, but there's more and more pressure. I think that will always be technically possible, but there was a website called localbitcoins.com, which enabled people to sort of meet up it's like a marketplace for people to physically meet up to buy and sell Bitcoin.
Oh wow,
Um,
that sounds like a really bad idea.
I used it once.
Oh yeah, you
It
didn't get
works
kidnapped by men with hammers or anything.
well, I think I felt safe doing it in Japan, that's for sure. And you know, being a big white male gaijin, yeah, that closed down recently, and you know, I think it looked like it was their decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some pressure from
Right.
entities in the background, and certainly more and more governments want to introduce regulation so that they know everything about everybody who does any kind of cryptocurrency transactions. So yeah, eventually you probably will have to go through a financial institution for any in any practical sense.
Okay.
Bit of a tangent,
but a pretty good answer.
Yeah. We've got one more question, I think we're going to ask it, and this is something that you did a video on, I think, recently about emergency fund.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. So.
So emergency fund is a very good idea, but how much should we have? So let's ask our ChatGPT expert, how much do you save in yen for an emergency fund?
The amount someone should save in yen for an emergency fund in Japan will depend on their individual circumstances and needs. Financial experts generally recommend saving at least 3 to 6 months' worth of living expenses in an emergency fund. This fund should cover essential expenses such as rent or mortgage payments, utilities, food, and transportation in the event of an unexpected job loss or other financial emergency. To determine the exact amount needed, individuals should first calculate their monthly expenses and multiply that amount by the number of months they wish to have covered by the emergency fund. It's also important to regularly reassess and adjust the emergency fund as circumstances change over time.
There we go.
Fair enough. That's pretty much what I say to people. So
Yeah,
can't really argue with that. So I mean, what have we got here? So two out of 5 were pretty much perfect, and the other 3
that
were
was a good one, wasn't it?
a variable quality. From, you know, Japan being a good place was reasonable to the NISA system was a hot mess, and the Nenkin was kind of okay.
Yeah. Just wanted to sort of highlight, it said monthly expenses, and I think this is something that, well, I for one, maybe others do, is you sort of skim read this and you think, my salary is this much, therefore I need 3 times my monthly salary as my emergency fund. But I think there is an important distinction between your income and your expenses. So if you're able to reduce your expenses, then 3 times your expenses will be less than 3 times your income.
Yeah, and even more than that, like your absolute essential expenses. So obviously, if you're in financial difficulties, you're not going to be going out to eat at restaurants.
Right.
You're not going to be going out shopping for stuff. So you can really kind of calculate it based on, you know, rent, basic food, and so on, rather than your normal spending, which, you know, if you're a rational human, you will stop doing that if you're in trouble. So
Yes.
So yeah, it's not as big as you might think, especially if you've got a high savings rate.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're saving 30%, 40% of your salary, then your monthly expenses are not going to be anywhere near your full salary. And it's the same when you're thinking about retirement. So, you know, you've got the 4% kind of rule of thumb, which says if you have 25 times your living expenses invested, then you can probably live off that for 30 years or so.
Which is
and again, we're talking about living expenses. So
yeah, different to your salary, your current salary.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. Right. Well, I think we've taken up enough of ChatGPT's time. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. It's been great, but I think we're going to try and get a human guest next time.
Yeah. Until next time.
Awesome. Okay. Right. Now it's just us bipeds.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we going to seg into the news portion of the show next?
Yes.
Have we got any comments, by the way? Any questions? Or?
Just about ChatGPT, actually.
Oh, really?
What system that was? Yeah. So yeah, for people who want to know, it was the ChatGPT, which is chat.gpt, openai.com, but I used a browser extension called, I think it's Voice Control. And so plug that in, and then you can actually speak to it as well as getting it to talk to you. So it's audio control for ChatGPT.
Wow. So you can sit here and have a conversation with it like properly.
You could do, yeah, kind of boring.
I'm
but
sorry, Dave, I can't do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Right. So segueing into news.
Yes, and so I've been hearing about the Bank of Japan. I've been getting up a new person in charge, and that makes me think of interest rates, economy, inflation, what's going to happen. So you can tell me exactly what's going to happen, can you, Ben?
Of course I can, yeah. That's why I'm sitting on my private island rather than, I think there's two things that might affect most of us. And one is going to be the exchange rate. So with other countries, is the yen going to get stronger? Is it going to stay at this 130 to the dollar kind of range? Is it going to get weaker in the future? And the other thing is, interest rates. And probably the biggest effect of interest rates for most people is going to be on mortgages.
Yeah. Because
I think something like 90% of mortgages in Japan are floating rate mortgages. So they're not fixed.
Really? That many?
Oh, yeah.
I would have
especially
thought,
recently.
With them being historically low, people would have jumped in to get the fixed rates, but no.
No, because it's kind of recency bias. So, rates have been low recently. So we think they're going to continue to be low.
Yeah.
There's also a protection mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear floating rate mortgage, you might think, oh, so if the rates go up a lot this year, then your mortgage interest payments are also going to go up a lot this year. But actually, Japan has a system to kind of mitigate that.
Yes.
So rates can only rise by, or rather your repayment rates can only rise by so much every so often. So I think they can only rise once a year or once every 2 years, and only by a certain proportion. So you're almost guaranteed not to see your mortgage rates kind of double or triple, which might have happened if there wasn't that mechanism.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I got a floating rate mortgage 6 years ago, 0.5%, and it's still 0.5%. So it hasn't gone up, even though interest rates are moving slightly upwards at the moment.
Yeah.
The other reason a lot of people thought that interest rates are unlikely to go up is because of the government debt. Basically, there's so much government debt, and at the current interest rate, they can make those payments. But if the interest rate increases enough, they'd have trouble paying the interest on government bonds. So that's one reason why people went with the floating rate mortgages.
Yeah. Okay.
You have a fixed rate mortgage, I believe.
I do, yeah. Just because I have memory from when I was younger, my parents struggling with the very high interest rates at the time in the UK. I think it was the 80s, and just fear of that happening again. But I didn't realize there was that sort of limit in Japan of how much or how quickly those rates can go up. So I don't know if I'd do the same thing again. But having said that, there wasn't a huge difference between fixed and floating. And so, just to know that for the whole term, we don't need to worry about interest rates. That was worth it for me.
I think having that peace of mind and knowing that you can definitely afford your payments is probably going to be worth it in some situations.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for us, the reason we went with a floating rate mortgage is because our mortgage is actually quite small.
Right.
So it was never going to be a large proportion, and we always had the option of just paying it off if it became uncomfortable or whatever. So
yeah.
And the next thing basically is inflation, right? Because that very much is happening in Japan. Constantly on the news, we're seeing, 10,000 food items went up in price, or 100,000 food items went up in price. And it's not just prices either. It's also shrinkflation.
Yes.
So I bought a Kit Kat a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, don't tell me.
And it was in a box. So it looked like a normal sized Kit Kat in a box.
Yeah.
It was very light. It was suspiciously light. So I opened it and it was kind of like 3 mini Kit Kats inside.
No.
And I was like,
Oh,
wow, I really got played here because and obviously to keep the price the same, you have to reduce the content of the product. So
Yeah, I did see this is actually a couple of years ago now, but Meiji with their milk in the supermarkets, they released this new packaging, and it had a little plastic lid on instead of the regular trying to unfold it kind of paper carton thing. So they're making a big deal out of that. You know, try this new packaging; it's much more convenient. Blah blah blah. And they've reduced the package from 1 liter to 900 milliliters. But the focus, they've managed to make it so the focus is all on the new, you know, easy way to open
convenient.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, companies are in a real hard place here because if they raise prices, they're going to lose sales. But if they don't raise prices, they can't continue producing the product. So,
Yeah, unless they do it like Gari Gari Kun. Did you see the? There was an advert, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They raised they did this. We call them lollies in Britain. I don't know what they call them in the US. Popsicles, maybe that's it. And they went up 1 yen from like 66 yen to 67 yen or something like that. And they did a 30-second or 15-second advert, and it's a big bunch of the staff just standing outside. The camera just slowly zooms out, and they just all bow to apologize for raising the price 1 yen. So many Japanese adverts are terrible, and this was just beautiful, and consequently loads of support for them. It's like, it's the first time in 20 years we forgive you, you know.
they should have put out more, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, they might have to now. But yeah, it can be done well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real struggle, especially for the smaller companies, I think. So like my wife has this school that you can maybe see behind me. And, you know, we've got maybe 5 full-time staff here. And we haven't raised prices this year for the customers. So
yeah.
So basically with electricity and similar things going up, and then, you know, we would like to give the staff a cost of living kind of increase.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really tough. So, and I can imagine it's the same for small businesses. And of course, small businesses make up the majority of employers in Japan.
Do
you know, even though the emphasis is on the big companies,
yeah,
the big companies are giving wage increases out. You know, I think what was it? Uniqlo was in the news.
Uniqlo announced one. Yeah, they got all the headlines. Do you think it's kind of like a trickle down thing, and then the small business at the bottom, like there's nowhere else to go to pass those costs on to, and they're kind of stuck?
I don't know. Like I've seen a lot of articles about the major unions are all making kind of historically large demands for wage increases, like the Toyota union of people and so on. So they're all going for like 15,000 yen base increases. And you'd think that would trickle down, but I'm not sure it will. I'd like to see the government put the minimum wage up. Personally, I think wages need to rise in Japan. I think that's a really important thing that's going to fix some of our economic problems.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that, I think, is to raise the minimum wage, because in Miyagi it's still 800 yen or less, I think.
Oh, it varies per prefecture, does it?
It does, yeah. So there's a separate one. So like Tokyo, I think, is over 1,000 yen now, but it's much cheaper here. So I think if you raise that minimum wage, then you're pushing everyone up, I think, because you've got to compete with minimum wage, basically. So you're probably going to pay a little bit more than that if you want to attract workers and so on. So, but yeah, so it's interesting. So are we going to get enough wage increases to take away the pain from inflation, or, you know, are we just going to have stagnant wages and prices going up and people spending less, and we get this kind of horrible spiral going where people get poorer and life gets harder? So
right, and harder to attract people from outside Japan, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, you saw the news about the government yet again making some like fast track for like elite people from outside. I'm like, we don't need to attract elite people. We need to attract farmers,
healthcare workers,
and manual workers, and people who work in restaurants, because that's what we haven't got in Japan at the moment. So.
Yeah.
The last time they tried to do one of these elite visa things, I think they had about 200 applicants, you know, out of thousands of places that they prepared. But
Yeah.
I mean, basically, Japan is not that attractive as a
Right. Yeah.
as a business destination compared to the US or Singapore or
Yeah, certainly salaries in the software industry are nothing compared to what the same skilled person could get in America, especially, but even other countries as well.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I look at American salaries, I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a UPS driver and you make more than I did as a university professor here. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's hurting Japan, isn't it, long term?
It'd be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few years. I think that'll make a big difference as to how we weather this kind of demographic crunch and kind of cost of living crunch and all the rest of it. So
yes, yeah.
Speaking of crunches, so I had COVID last month, late on, just after the RetireJapan TV. So
yeah. Oh dear.
I was wondering. So luckily it was fairly mild. So I had for me it was 3 days, 3 days of proper symptoms, and then there was a mandatory kind of isolation period still.
Right.
So I had a really bad sore throat the first day, had a test kit. We had one at home. So I had a test kit the next morning and tested positive. And then I had a fever and chills for 1 day.
Yeah.
It was weird. I hadn't had that before. So I was just freezing. I could not get warm at all. So I'm at home with the heating, running full blast and wearing like 18 sweaters with a hot water bottle. And I'm shivering. It was amazing.
Wow.
And then the next day I had a headache. I had a really bad headache, but they were kind of, it's weird because they didn't overlap.
Oh, okay.
The first day it was only a sore throat, and the second day it was kind of only fever, and then it was only a headache. So it was, yeah. And then after that, it was kind of,
So no sort of lingering effects then?
Definite brain fog and not being able to focus, not being able to concentrate. And anyone who's tried to email me for the last couple of weeks, like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'll get back to you soon, kind of thing. But it seems to be getting better. So every day I wake up and I'm like sharper and like, I'm like, whoa, because you don't realize your baseline when you're under it, right?
Right.
It's only when you get better that you're like, oh my God, this is how normal feels. It's kind of like being hungover. You don't really get until it goes away, and then you're like, oh, thank you.
So I hate to keep bringing up Mount Fuji, but I was thinking, I was at the top of Mount Fuji, it's like, the breathing, it's not that bad actually. I don't feel any different. And then start walking down, and suddenly it's like, it feels so much better now. I didn't realize it was bad, but yeah, I can see the difference. So yeah, you only notice afterwards that it was.
Humans are very good at adapting to things, I think. So very quickly you get used to whatever situation you're in.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you're getting better, and hopefully you'll be completely back soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty much over it now. One thing I was a bit shocked by still was the availability of medical care. So,
right. Did you try to go to a doctor or anything?
Well, my wife decided that it might be good to, I was like, we don't need to bother, but she actually got this insurance policy that paid out if you got COVID.
Oh.
But only if you saw a doctor and only if you got medicine from the doctor.
Yeah.
So she called the fever hotline in Sendai, and they said, oh yeah, you can go to these clinics. And she called the clinics and they all said no. So, so there you go. Even the kind of official government clinics are just like, nah, we're not going to see new patients. So
really? Wow.
Yeah. So that was, I'm always slightly discouraged by this because I have had some bad experiences with not being able to access medical care, particularly, outside of working hours.
Right.
Really? If you're sick at night or if you're sick on the weekend, it can sometimes be difficult to get medical care until like Monday morning for some reason. So yeah, I had a couple of times with my wife where she was actually quite ill. And one time we went to the hospital and they were like, yeah, we're not going to see you. And I kind of did the kind of gaijin smash thing where I was like, no, you are going to see my wife. And, and they did. And that shouldn't work. You shouldn't only get medical care if you're going to be pushy about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It should be either, there's medical care available or it's not available for a good reason. It shouldn't be on this kind of discretionary, oh, we'll see you if you're going to make a fuss about it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very discouraged by that.
And like the communication sort of not mistake, but the miscommunication that they told you go to these places, but then the places say no.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
should know before they refer you to them.
I would rather that hospitals had a duty of care, but they don't seem to. There seems to be a lot of discretion in terms of them choosing to accept patients or not, which
yeah.
I think if you're part of the government health system, then that's not great. But still, we got through it fine. We didn't have we weren't in any kind of danger. So
yeah. Well, that's good.
Good. Cool. Wanted to talk about ski resorts as well, because I've seen some articles about the kind of dire situation of a lot of ski resorts in Japan. They've been hit by a double whammy of climate change, which is making the snow much less dependable, especially at lower level. The lower level resorts basically don't have good snow. And also kind of winter sports are falling out of fashion in Japan. So
I didn't know
my wife always talks about how, in the 80s and 90s, like everyone was skiing, it was almost impossible to find someone who didn't ski.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's very much a niche thing and people aren't into it so much. It's rarer. Like I ask our young students, do you ski or snowboard? And most of them don't.
Really? Even up in Sendai, where you're closer to the snow, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a whole bunch of ski resorts within an hour or two. Really easy access. But I went to Appi recently in Iwate. It's a big resort, decent snow. That's why we go there, because it's a couple of hours drive away, but it's much better snow than the places closer to us. And there's a big kind of resort there. And it was actually bought by IHG, which is the hotel chain that has Holiday Inn and Crowne Plaza and those big. So they bought the entire resort and changed it into a Holiday Inn and a Crowne Plaza and an Intercontinental, which is their kind of super high-end brand. And then COVID hit pretty much at the same time. Basically, when they bought it, COVID hit and it's been decimated, basically. So we were up there and the whole place is kind of sad because nothing's open. So within the hotels have like 10 restaurants, but only 2 of them are actually operating.
Oh dear. Which is, so the people that go there get a worse experience because you sort of feel like you're in a ghost town.
And then you're in this death spiral where, people don't come, therefore you don't have the facilities. And then the people that do come are like, well, this is a bit dingy and not fantastic. And yeah. So it's pretty, but we also went to a local one near Sendai, Shiro Ishizao. And that's actually run by the local town as an MPO. And they're very much focused on, this is for kids and they've got some incredibly kind of cheap deals for kids and they've got competitions all the time. So we went there and there was competition. It was rammed. It was full of families and like really, and that was great. It was doing really, really well. So that's the kind of contrast between the kind of high end international focused resort in Appi, which is not doing well because visitors haven't really returned, and the kind of local one run by the town for kids that seems to be doing quite well. So I think there's going to be a lot of variation on how the resorts are doing.
So it's the high ends that are suffering from what you've seen.
I don't know, because Niseko's doing great, right? It's kind of half owned by Australians basically, and that's pretty expensive, I think. So it's gonna, I think it's very much depending on each one and how they're doing with marketing. And because I think the Appi, the IHG thing, they're very much depending on the Chinese market,
right?
And of course, normal Chinese tourists can't come to Japan at the moment because I think the Chinese government isn't allowing them to join tours to Japan. I think it's a political thing.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
So they can come here from Japan's point of view, but they can't because of domestic kind of regulations. So
Oh, okay.
so they're not back yet. So that might make a difference when they return. So we saw a lot of Australians in Appy and lots of people from Taiwan.
Oh, right.
And only about half Japanese. So I think that it's kind of almost too expensive for Japanese people now because the prices really have gone up a lot.
Okay, that's another thing with the with exchange rate and the economy and stuff. You're going to get split for tourists and for domestic rates.
Yeah, because for tourists coming here with the cheap yen, you know, stuff that seems ridiculous to us is really cheap to them. So
yeah, reminds me of visiting Eastern Europe back in the 90s. Like things were so expensive for local people, but for us it was dirt cheap. And
I went to Prague on a school trip in 95, and it was like ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then last news item, you went to a real estate event.
Oh, I did, yes. Realestate.jp is the name of a website run by Emil Gorgies, I think that's how you pronounce it. And the current website actually is still referring to this Japan Real Estate Summit. And I think it was the first one that they've done, but they did say they were considering doing another one because it went very well. And it was a one-day event with 5 speakers talking about everything related to property for non-Japanese in Japan. So we had 5 speakers, and I'll just go quickly through the 5 areas that they talked about. The first was Emil Gorgies he's the actual owner, I think, of realestate.jp, talking about buying a home for yourself. And so not for investment, but to actually live in. And he was very good. He gave sort of real figures without revealing personal details. He would give real examples and talk about his knowledge of what the banks will be able to offer you as a foreigner. And I don't know about you, but very often I hear stories like such and such a bank won't allow this, or if you've got this, if you haven't got 1 year's full employment, you won't be able to get a mortgage or something. And he says there are no sort of rules across the board. Each bank has its own rules, and so he's very knowledgeable, and experts like him would be able to find the bank that's suitable for you and your position. So don't just cross off a mortgage because you think, oh, I haven't been fully employed for 2 years yet, therefore I can't get it. Forums like the Retire Japan forum are very good, but there are sometimes things that you need to be in a sort of an industry position like him to know what the unwritten rules of certain banks are.
Interesting.
He also talked about 105% mortgages. I wish I'd gone to him. I'm not trying to like sell his company or anything, but
I got 110% mortgage.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, they covered the fees.
Right.
So all the kind of government fees and estate agent fees, we borrowed money to pay those.
Wow.
So I actually ended up with a spare 450,000 yen that I just stuck in my investment account. So,
wow. So we got 80% mortgage. So we had to put up 20%. But I thought, well, they're giving me a non-Japanese. They're giving me a mortgage. I should be grateful. That was my attitude. And it was, it's a good rate. It was. I can't remember exactly what it is now, actually. But and of course we don't lose the money. We just have to put up more up front. But I wish I'd sort of investigated more and not just assumed that things are going to be tough because I'm a foreigner, because they're not necessarily are. Anyway,
my impression is as long as you have permanent residence and a full-time kind of job, there's no real difference in treatment between Japanese citizens and non-Japanese citizens. But the permanent residence is a bit of a sticking point for a lot of banks.
Yes, and then it varies depending on your spouse as well. And what was it? Even the multiples, I think, varies per bank. So anyway, there's a lot of sort of options out there. It was very sort of optimistic talk. So if you are having trouble getting a mortgage, don't just believe what sort of non-experts tell you, because people in the industry can find ways to help you, I think.
Nice.
That was the first talk. The second talk was a lady called Blanca Kobayashi. And a couple of years ago, I think 2021, she started up a company called Arc Reform, focusing on renovations and reform of properties aimed at non-Japanese customers. And she didn't have many specific examples. Her message basically was that anything is possible. Whatever you want, it's possible. I did get the impression that budgets could be quite high. But one thing that interested me with her examples is she gets some people who have bought an aparto. Now, aparto is a little bit different to mansion. They're sort of seen as like lower grade, generally much cheaper, and therefore much easier to buy as an investment, but you get lower returns, lower rental income from it. But if you renovate it, you're allowed to renovate anything inside. Generally, I'm sure it depends, but generally, if you buy it, you're allowed to renovate anything inside. So even the front door, you could renovate the inside of the front door, just not the outside of the front door. So you can't put in double glazing windows, but you can put in some kind of interior thing against the window to effectively make it double glazing.
We actually did that.
Oh, really?
So it's the same in a mansion. So any kind of communally owned building, the outside you're not allowed to touch because you don't own it. So the building owns the outside, so the outside windows and the balconies and the doors and so on. Which is why we have these inner window things.
Right. Yeah.
The in plus window, and they're wonderful actually. They take about 2 or 3 hours to install.
What are they called? In plus.
I think that's a brand name. So Lixil's one are called In Plus, and that's what we got. But they're fairly reasonable. You can sometimes get subsidies to put them in, and they make a huge difference in terms of noise and heat.
And
I really recommend it. If you own your place and you want to increase the livability, make it more pleasant, then putting in windows is an instant win.
Right. Okay. Because I did it myself, DIY style, with some big sheets of Perspex from the DIY store, which seems to work, but it was quite fiddly. So yeah, I didn't realize there's like a proper branded version you could get.
Oh yeah. Really common renovation, basically.
Yeah.
One of the cheaper ones.
Yes. Well, so anyway, she recommended that, but also she said you can, again, if anything is possible interior wise. And so as long as something is not a supporting wall, knock down the walls and create a big open plan kitchen. And she had these photos of this regular aparto, not super flashy from the outside, and the inside was really beautiful with nice wooden floors. So yeah, you can really increase your sort of rental potential through renovations if the budget is right. So yeah, that was
nice.
A very interesting one. The next talk was Ziv. Now we know Ziv.
Ziv, a friend of RetireJapan's.
Yep. So he's from Nippon Tradings International, which has been going for quite a few years now, I think. He talked about buying properties specifically for rental income, for renting out. And it's effectively passive income, because if you go through their company, they will deal with all collecting the money, I think, and just pass it on to you, taking out their fees. So he was very good going through specific case studies, and I can't remember all the figures now. A couple of things that struck me. One was the population dropping in Japan. That really kind of puts me off properties and investment, because who's going to rent all these properties in the future? And obviously he's fully aware of that. So when they do analysis of potential properties, they try and look at population graphs, and it does vary which part of Japan you're in. So the whole population is not decreasing at the same rate. And so they do look at particular areas which are very likely to remain popular in the future. And he likes sort of cities smaller than Tokyo, outside of the Tokyo region, in particular Fukuoka, I think he said Nagoya, so places like that where they believe there'll still be long-term demand. And the second thing that struck me was that the eventual yields you get, the eventual income you get, is going to be quite reduced because of maintenance costs, potential sort of empty periods. Like, let's say 1 month a year is going to be empty for switching tenants or whatever. And so I would think that it's actually not that much different to dividend income. So why would you purchase a property and put all your money into that rather than just buying shares, which you could sell if you needed to? And he said basically it comes down to just the personal choice and your what you feel comfortable with. And so he would not be comfortable buying shares for dividends because he doesn't know how to sort of analyze them, and wasn't confident with that. And he referenced his father, who said, if you've got a physical property, at the very least, you can live in it, and you've got something physical that you can touch and see and repair and all that stuff. So it really depends on what you feel comfortable.
Yeah, my godfather in Germany, He's
yeah.
very wealthy. He's a doctor, but his hobby is real estate. So he's got this enormous portfolio of real estate. And I was like, why are you doing this? Why don't you have stock market investments? He's like, yeah, I had stock market investments and then the price fell and I sold them all. And I'm not going to, basically he wasn't comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Whereas he is comfortable with real estate and he loves, getting a new place and decorating it. And for me, that's the opposite. So I've the idea of, trying to decorate something, I'm not interested at all. So, although for real estate in Japan, my understanding is that the big reason for a lot of people is using it as a tax write-off.
Right. Yeah. For the first 10 years or something.
Oh no, that's for home mortgages. So home mortgages, you can get a tax break on your remaining mortgage, right? You get I think it's 0.7% now. It used to be 1%, now it's 0.7.
Right.
For 13 years, but you can get a tax break based on the remaining loan. For commercial properties, that you don't get that, but you get to depreciate the building. And you can apply that depreciation to your income taxes. So I think generally people with high incomes in Japan have traditionally bought real estate in order to reduce their income taxes, basically.
So let's say I've got a building, I bought a building, I'm renting it out, and I can say the value of the building has gone down over this past year. Therefore, I've effectively had a loss. So this profit that I've made in a different investment balances out. I don't need to pay profit tax on that profit.
Not even your investments. You can apply that against income.
Oh, right.
So unlike investments, you can't apply investment losses to your income. But you can apply property depreciation to your income.
I did.
So if you're a high earner, you're earning 10 million yen, 15 million yen, 20 million yen. You're getting quite high income taxes now. You're in the kind of 30-40% bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can reduce that, that's an enormous return just by owning this building. And it's not even the actual value of the building. You can just depreciate it on a schedule. So you say over X number of years based on whether the building's wood or concrete or whatever, you say this is going to depreciate based on this schedule, and that's how much it depreciates every year, kind of thing.
So you know in advance effectively what so-called loss you're going to make every year.
Exactly. And so I think that's the hidden ingredient that makes it attractive to a lot of people.
Right.
So I mean, as an investment, personally, I think investing in this, I mean, it's less volatile though, I guess, than the stock market.
Yeah. Yes,
you're not going to see a 30% loss in a year based on your buildings, right? Because that could happen in the stock market. So, and also for diversification purposes, if you already have a stock market portfolio and you want to diversify it, then buying some real estate might be a good way to do that.
Yeah.
Although I personally don't, and I can't imagine myself doing so in the future.
Yeah, that's one reason why I went to this summit, to sort of learn about these things and see whether it's for me. And I think, my temperament is, and my sort of existing knowledge is more on the stocks and shares side of things rather than property. But it's still,
I think I'm just too lazy to deal with physical real estate.
Plus you need a lot of money up front as well.
Yeah. Cool. So, and you had a fourth speaker.
There was one more. So this is slightly sort of offbeat a little. Oh no, sorry, two more. Beg your pardon. Next was Tracy Northcott talking about short-term stays. Now, most people might say Airbnb. She said no, short-term stays, because you don't necessarily have to use Airbnb as your marketing channel. You can do very well without Airbnb. Anyway, she runs a company called Tokyo Family Stays, short-term rentals in houses that she owns, and this is, you buy a property, you make it suitable for somebody to stay in for a weekend, a week, or whatever. And she did stress several times, this is not passive income. You don't buy it, get somebody to clean it, and then boom, you're done. She was really stressing the need, especially because of the sort of negative reaction to Airbnbs after a few years when they started here in Japan, the need to engage in the local area where your property is based. So meet with the local restaurant owners, have a chat with them, say, we're going to be bringing people to your restaurant, and making sure that they have a sort of a nice positive view of the short rental property that you own. And consequently, when the people come and stay there, they hopefully have a better experience in the local community. that was very interesting to listen to. And so, yeah, the first takeaway was you have to make an effort to engage with the local community and be part of that to get the most out of it. It's not passive income. And the second thing that was interesting is that unlike, for example, like a long-term like mansion that somebody rents for a year or whatever, there are more opportunities for add-on income, add-on revenue. And so you might have people coming to stay and you offer them a tour and you sort of hook up with a tour operator or something and you can get a bit of extra money that way. Or going back to the local community, you have a little sort of welcome pack in your property and you can suggest a few restaurants, go and meet with those restaurant owners and say, hey, I'm guiding people to your restaurant. How about, I get a small commission from that. And she said, I think it was sometimes you could get, another 20, 30% or something on top of the rental income in these sort of little additional revenue, little earners.
Right.
So, yeah, really interesting to hear. And then the last talk was Matt Ketchum, and he runs a company called Akia and Inaka. And almost immediately he's trying to put to bed the myth that we've seen on YouTube that you can come to Japan, pick up a house for free and have a beautiful life in the countryside with a thatched roof and everything's wonderful.
Yeah.
He really focused on the appeal of Akia, that's empty houses, of which there are many. He says the figure is reported as, what was it now? 1 million or something like that. But he thinks that's still way, way underestimated. And so basically you got pick of the bunch if you want an empty property. But many of them, the free ones, for example, come with either strings attached or it's somewhere that you wouldn't really want to live anyway. So if you want an empty house, then be prepared to pay something for something that is either going to be somewhere you want to live or as a sort of investment. But again, you're not just doing it because you got a cheap investment and you're going to make loads of money. And he works kind of as a consultant, I think. And some of the projects that he's worked on have been people getting one of them, I think, was an empty school, and then converting the sort of the tannoy loudspeaker room, whatever it's called, I've forgotten the name of it in Japanese, into a music studio. So it's got some kind of audio equipment.
Oh, the broadcasting club room. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. It's got soundproofing already. Convert that into a little recording studio, and then invite bands or whatever to come and record there.
Oh, and turn the classrooms into hotel rooms or whatever.
Yes, they were going to do something with the science lab, and I can't remember what it was now.
Make a kitchen.
But similarly, an abandoned warehouse or something, and then that's a location that you can offer to bands when they come and do videos or fashion shoots or whatever. So he really focused on the fact that Akia is, one, not a free place where you can go and live, but two, they have amazing potential for things that you wouldn't necessarily think about, and it might be some dream that you've always had. And it could be possible. You can pick up a relatively low cost place. You need some investment, but you've got that sort of potential there to fulfill your dreams, I think he said.
We almost bought one.
Oh, really?
Kind of 4 years ago. I was kind of idly scanning through, I'd just heard the term and I was looking at Akia locally.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this farmhouse only about 30 minutes drive from us.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the country, beautiful area, huge amount of land, fairly decent house for 1 million yen.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay, we could, that's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like a wonderful place to go for the weekend. My wife wanted to have somewhere where she could grow vegetables and things. And I was like, yeah, I could make a writing shack or, my writing studio or whatever. And I called up and someone else bought it that morning.
Oh,
so I was like 5 hours too late or whatever.
Wow,
and I haven't seen anything anywhere near as good since.
Yeah.
That was maybe that one kind of amazing opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they are out there.
Yeah, I think so. If you keep an eye out and scan the listings.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing that I've found about Akia is that there's not really a centralized database.
Yeah, exactly what he was saying.
Each town has their own website, so you pretty much have to go looking for it. You have to know the name of the town and find their website and whatever. So
And even then, he said that a lot of places it's just all done on paper. In some areas, it's not on the website or in a database, or they're not
you might
connected.
have to
or-
call up the Kuyakusho and be like,
Yeah, fax me that list.
Totally.
But one advantage of there being so many available, or another advantage, is that you can be really picky about the area. And so one concern is, as a like a non-local person, I'm going to move into this community, and they're not going to be happy about this outsider coming in. And he's saying, sure, there are some communities like that. So in that case, they just cross it off their list, and they've got so many places to choose from. They'll go and focus, and they will find communities where they're really keen. They know the population is dropping, and yeah, please attract people, people from outside to come in and, revitalize the area. So yeah, you can get a really nice sort of location with help from companies.
If you do some work, if you have to do the research and
yeah, but just don't expect it to be free.
Cool. So it sounds like a fairly decent event. So you enjoyed it, I guess?
I did, yes. It was, I think, 5,000 yen to attend, and not only the interesting speakers, but also the other attendees were very interesting to talk to as well. I recommend it. Keep an eye on that. Realestate.jp is the website. And
Are they going to do some more of those, I guess?
they just took a rough count of hands of who would like to attend again, and it seemed pretty good reaction. So I would expect they would, I guess, in next year.
Okay, I think we announced that on the Monday read
right.
before it happened. So yeah, if there's a future one, we'll probably stick it on there as well. So please subscribe to Retire Japan, either the weekly or the monthly list, and you'll get all that information. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. So actually, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive now on train prices.
Oh, yes.
And this is something that I don't really know about because I don't really take the train very much.
All right.
I'm going to defer to you on this.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't know much about it either. So we went to Kinugawa Onsen, which is just north of Nikko in Tochigi Prefecture. Lovely area. And we went, it was last month, I think. And the disappointing side is that some places were closed. We went to several places like, no, we're closed this week or whatever. But the benefit was it was really empty, and you could get seats anywhere. And, it was really nice. We went for a hike and it wasn't crowded at all. Lovely area. Anyway, so we're getting the train up there. And my instinct is you go to the train station and you order your tickets. But it was a bit of a hassle. And this was only, I think, 2 days before we were due to go. It was quite a last minute decision. And so we went to Ekinet, and I usually don't like Ekinet because I find their login process and all that
is the website from hell, isn't it?
It's not really user friendly.
I've tried to use it half a dozen times, and not once have I succeeded in buying a ticket. It just will not let me register, or it just doesn't work, or I don't know if it's got better. But even my wife is equally. It's not a language thing because she's equally frustrated, right? So
yeah. It didn't seem too bad this time. I usually get frustrated. So I already had an account, but I couldn't log in with it because I haven't used it for 12 months. So therefore it closes your account automatically and you've got to create a new one. I don't like that it asks for my date of birth and all this stuff when I just want to buy a train ticket. But anyway, I persevered, and they have, now I think this is just JR East and Hokkaido, but they have a thing called Toku Dane. And Toku is katakana, Da is hiragana, and then Ne is Ne from Nedan. So it's a funny sort of word play.
Pun.
It's a pun, yes. But anyway, we used that about 2 days before we wanted to travel and got this 30% off sort of offer. And I thought, 30% off, but we're booking far too late. We won't get it. But no, we did. We got 30% off just from going through the website. So I want to show people how to do this. And I'm going to try and share my screen here because I've got some screenshots. And
nice.
Apologies for people on the podcast. I will try and
walk you through it.
Yeah. So you go to the. Can you see the screen, by the way?
I can. Yep.
I just want to
this is the Ekinet website, I guess.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And they don't have an English option.
I don't think so. I couldn't find one.
It's not very friendly of them.
Right. Yeah. But we're here to help, so that's okay. So you go to Ekinet and then you look for the regular JR Kippu Moshikomi page where you're normally going to do a search for your tickets. And as you would normally, you would enter in your starting station and your destination station. So here I'm going from Urawa. Now we're not actually in Urawa. We get the regular train up to Urawa, and that is where we get the express from, which I think you need to book the seats on. So Urawa up to Kinugawa Onsen. I put the date in here for tomorrow, just as a test for one person. Leaving at 10
Is
o'clock.
that kanji like angry demon river?
Yeah, I think it is. Yes,
That's fantastic. That's such a good name.
they do river
Wow.
trips down it, but not at this time of year. That starts in April, I think. Yeah. Right. So anyway, we've put in the thing is, and it comes up with the result, which is what train is available to go from Urawa to Kinugawa Onsen. It's a 1 hour, 42-minute journey. And on the Spacia, which is a lovely train. Oh, it's so nice. There are so many trains in Japan, aren't there? That are
Yeah,
not
I
the-
keep
the
seeing
famous
articles
bullet
about
train.
like, you know, trains with foot spas or trains with like observation domes on top or
Incredible. Yeah, so the Shinkansen gets all these sort of publicity, but this was a beautiful train. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving forward there. A lovely train, is so comfortable, so spacious, and we could see Mount Fuji from. I tried to get it on the maps. It was, I think, 100 kilometers away or 100 miles away or something. We could still see it. Anyway, I'm digressing. So you get your ticket options here, and it says on the screen, Tokudane 30% off. So we then go on to the next screen, which is actually choosing the type of ticket that you want. So we've got the Spacia here, number 3 here, the 1054, and you can choose, do you want a regular fixed seat, or do you want the 30% off seat?
so you can select to not have a discount.
You can if you want
That's
to.
very progressive of them.
And so there's the slightly confusing thing here is the regular one looks cheaper than the discounted one. So for podcast listeners, the regular one here says 2,100 yen. The 30% off one says 2,580 yen. The difference is the discount one includes both halves of your ticket. You've got the sort of basic fare and then the express fare, the additional fare. The regular ticket that looks cheaper, that's because it's only the base fare, and then you've got to pay the additional express fare, and both of those are sort of regular price. So when you do that, you can choose.
Why would they display it like this?
I don't know. It's confusing. I think the only reason is because you might want to use your Suica or Pasmo for the base fare and only pay the express. In fact, sorry, I beg your pardon. There's 2,100 yen is the express fare. I beg your pardon. That's the one that you have to buy through the site. And then the base fare is optional. You either buy it through this site or you use your regular Suica, Pasmo, whatever.
Right, gotcha.
But if you want the 30% off, you have to buy the combined base fare and express fare. But it is indeed, 30% cheaper, or 29.8% cheaper, calculated as. It's not the combined fare that's cheaper. The 30% is just the express ticket part, but still, it adds up to 1,100 yen, I think, for this one-person journey. If you're going further, obviously, it's going to be a much bigger amount. So well worth doing. So anyway, you book it on the site, you pay with your credit card, which means you get your points, which you can't get if you just use Suica, your air miles or whatever.
Yes.
Then you're given a QR code, and you get that QR code on the phone, but you don't have to. If you don't want to use a QR code, you can just use your credit card. So you've either just got the same credit card that you bought the tickets with online, or you've got the QR code, and then at the time of your travel, you then go to the station to actually get the tickets. So you the machine where you get your tickets, it's not the regular recharging machine. It's one of the sort of the green Madoguchi ticket machines. You pick the Internet Yoyaku no Uketori, so internet reservation pickup, and it's got a little Ekinet written on there.
Nice.
Press that, follow the instructions on the screen, which is dead easy, and then you either insert the credit card that you originally used to buy the tickets with, or you wave the QR code at it, and it will work out who you are and print out your tickets.
Very nice.
There you go. You've just traveled for 30% less than it would have.
This is tied into them closing all the travel agents and stations, isn't it?
Right, probably, yeah.
Because they closed all the View plazas.
Yeah.
So you have to book online, basically. And I guess this is reflecting that reduction in costs and trying to sweeten the deal for people, maybe.
That's true, yes, which means it might not last forever. and it's not available on all lines. So yeah, check before you go whether it covers
Yeah,
your-
definitely worth checking out if you're going on we're going to Tokyo not Tokyo, we're going to Chiba for a wedding next month. So
yeah.
I will look into this.
Yeah, and as I said, I think there is a bigger discount if you're. It says there's a bigger discount up to 20 days in advance or something, or more than 20 days in advance. But when I tried it, it still was the same 30%. So I don't know how they work it out. But yeah,
Nice.
a good deal. Today's top tip.
Excellent. Right. So that takes us to the latter half of our program. We're going to do a quick thing on short items from the forum. We've only got 3 today. So in the forum at the moment, there's a lot of we've had a lot of activity, lots of new members joining, which is great to see. If you have questions about personal finance in Japan, the Retire Japan forum is a really good place to ask them because it's friendly and supportive, and you're not going to get any kind of troll-based activity because we don't tolerate it at Retire Japan. So anyway, some of the things that came up recently, the international driving permits came up recently. So people were asking, how do you get them? And basically it's you go to your local license center, you pay a small fee, you bring a passport photo, and you may or may not need to bring proof of your trip, which kind of shocked me because I haven't had to do that in the past. But apparently, especially around Tokyo, it's getting a bit stricter now. So before they'll give you an international driving license, you have to show them where you're going, basically, by having a printout of your e-ticket or something, which
Really?
seems very overly strict to me. But yeah, so all the details are on the forum there. What a huge story recently is the way that international brokers is being forced to basically move all their Japan clients to their Japan branch, International Brokers Japan, because in order to comply with the FSA here in Japan. So the details of what that's going to look like eventually is not entirely clear yet. So anyone who lives in Japan has the choice of either moving their assets to the Japan-based branch or leaving IB entirely. So it's pretty much a forced thing at the moment, but we're not sure what the conditions are going to be within IB Japan.
I'm not really familiar with them. So they're a regular share dealing broker, are they?
So it's International Brokers. It's a huge US brokerage. And until recently, they were the only one that took Japan residents without really having any hoops to jump through. So if you're an American citizen, that was one of your best options to invest. You could get an account with International Brokers International, so based in the US, and you could do all your investing through them, even though you lived in Japan. But that was a loophole, it seems, because the Japanese FSA insists that anyone who deals with Japan residents has to go through them. And so IB is now moving all their clients to the Japanese branch. And in the past, the Japanese branch was really limited. It only had Japanese shares. It didn't have access to NISA or iDeCo. It didn't do tax reporting. So it was a very watered down and not particularly attractive option.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to invest in other markets, you had to do the international version.
Right.
But with this move, it seems as though there's a chance that we're going to end up with a Japanese broker that works in English and allows Americans to buy US listed stocks and ETFs. And that would be huge. That would be an amazing development. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen.
Questions about that in the past, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare. It makes my life really difficult that Americans don't really have any good options in Japan. And this would go a long way to fixing that if it works out like that.
Yeah.
But we haven't got all the details, and we're going to find out in the next few weeks, maybe a couple of months. So I'm really excited about this, but I am also ready to be disappointed if it doesn't work out the way I want it to.
Right. I suppose this is an example of how the forum is useful, because at some point somebody's going to try and open the new account.
Well,
or
there's
they'll notice
loads of
changes in the account or something.
yeah. I mean, there's loads of forum members who have accounts, so they are now at present being moved over and getting letters and communication. So it's very interesting. It's a really interesting discussion to watch. And then the third one is about transferring large amounts of money to Japan, and your possible tax obligations and things like that. And I think the main takeaway there is that moving money is not a taxable event. If you have money in another country and it's yours and you've paid all your taxes that are due on it and you move it, that doesn't really do anything.
Right.
It's probably a good idea to let your bank know that the money is arriving, because if they suddenly get a large international transfer, sometimes they'll send it back or not accept it. So it's always better to go to them in advance, say, yeah, I've got 20 million yen arriving next week. Please deal with it appropriately. And they'll often ask for, where does the money come from? What's it for? And once you get through those questions, there's no real problem there. The problem arises if, perhaps you owed some taxes on that money and you forgot to declare them to the National Tax Agency here in Japan. That could be a problem. So it's always worth making sure that you're, declaring and paying any taxes that you might owe in Japan.
Yeah.
And that's it. So we normally at this point we'd be doing answering any questions that we have in the chat. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Yep. First of all, we get a few comments.
Nice.
Terry says very interested in how IB develops. Yep. Thank you, Terry. I think you're not alone there. Now, before that, we had one question from Daniel, another Daniel, and really sorry to hear this, but I'll read his question out. I recently lost my wife, who was Japanese. We had planned to stay in Japan for life. Now, what do I do? Well, yeah, very sorry.
Well, that is the nightmare, isn't it? So
I think just from a financial point of view is really where we can help, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm in the same situation. My wife's also Japanese, so yeah. What would you do at that point? I guess there's the short term, dealing with paperwork and taxes and accounts and all that stuff, and then it's kind of thinking about where you want to be at this point. I think for a lot of people at that point they might consider maybe returning to their home country in some cases, and some people might decide to stay here because they'll they have a life here and so on. So it's a really tough. It also depends on your age, I guess, and how integrated you are with Japanese society. Yeah, it's going to be something that takes time to figure out. And you're probably gonna, I mean, based on my experience of various things, it's probably going to go in waves where you have good days and bad days, and it's about kind of waiting it out in a way. So I think maybe not making any sudden decisions, and taking time and talking to people around you, that would be how I would advise. But I mean, incredibly tough situation to deal with for anyone.
You mentioned earlier about the Japanese pension being available anywhere. So if he's paid in for more than 10 years to the Japanese pension system, then that's not going to hold him back. That's one thing that gives you a bit of freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. So Japan, and also for us, the UK, you can claim your pension anywhere in the world. They'll send the money to foreign bank accounts. So that's not a limitation in how things are.
Yeah. And with iDeCo as well, I think you can leave and get your money out of iDeCo even if you're not 60 yet, I think.
Only at the beginning. So that's a new thing. In the past, it wasn't possible to get money out at all. Right. Now, if you're non-Japanese and you leave Japan, within 5 years of opening the account, or if you've put in less than a certain amount that I can't quite remember, I think it might be 250,000 yen. So as long as you meet both of those criteria, you can withdraw your money.
Oh, so if it's more than that amount, you leave
But if
Japan.
you've paid in for longer than 5 years, or you've put in more than 250,000 yen, you can't take it out. You just have to wait until you're 60 to
right.
get the money. But you can keep managing it.
Right. Okay.
You
And
still have control of the account. You can buy and sell investments within the account. You just can't add any money,
Right.
and you can't take the money out.
And when you get 60, they could give that money, send that money to a foreign bank account, I guess.
Yes. The brokers, I've asked a couple of brokers about this, and then exactly the same answer. Yep. Once you reach 60, we'll send the money to wherever you want us to.
Okay. So at least you've got flexibility there. I did wonder the other day, actually, what would happen if I were left on my own here, because I really like it here. I'm very comfortable, and they've got a nice community here. And I really don't know what I'd do, because obviously my family's back in the UK. Parents aren't going to be around forever. We've got a son who is out of the country at the moment, but probably will be back in Japan. So if I were getting old and needed care, it'd be nice to be near him. But then, family back home, which is, I don't know.
I mean, for me, it's quite easy because I don't really have family back home.
Right, I heard.
Yes. So, I mean, I've got my uncle and aunt living in Spain. I've got a cousin in London. I've got lots of cousins actually, but all over the world. But yeah, I mean, my daughter lives next door and her kids, and I'm training my granddaughter to look after me. So she's 11 now, and I'm training her to manage my money when I'm older. So I think I'll probably stay here.
I thought you meant training her. I was like, this is how you're going to feed me. This is how you're going to be upstairs.
No. It's asset management. So, yeah, and I like it here. I have enough Japanese to cope, I think, even without necessarily my wife helping me. It might be a bit harder, but I mean, I was in hospital for 6 weeks, 3 weeks. The amount of time keeps dilating. I think it was about 3 weeks. I was in hospital after an operation last year, and that was fine. No problems whatsoever with the language. So I think for many people, the idea of going into like a nursing home, in Japan is an intimidating prospect with the language and the culture and so on. So
Daniel's actually just replied in the chat. He said he does get Japan's pension. So of course, one other thing is what we were talking about earlier is the exchange rate. That if you're outside of Japan, what that can get you is going to be
it depends where you are, I guess. But yeah, the purchasing power of that pension is going to be less in some countries.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, going to the UK would be like moving to a new country for me. I don't have anything there. I left the UK when I was 21, so.
Oh, right.
I've lived here for 23 years. So.
Oh, really? You've hit that mark there. I'm not quite there yet, but close.
Oh, yeah. More than half my life in Japan. And before that, I lived in Spain for 10 years. And, so the UK is a very small part of my life. And, we've thought about maybe moving to Thailand. But that, or a similar kind of low cost, kind of easy to live country. But that becomes less attractive the older we get, I think.
Really? Because that's
the idea of just moving to a new place, new culture. We don't speak the language. We don't understand how things work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
but I wonder how, I mean, in some circumstances, that might be what people want, a complete fresh start, especially if it's in a country where the cost of living is a little bit lower. So you've got sort of more, your money can get you a bit more, I don't know, security, like your emergency fund can be a bit bigger, for example.
Yep, definitely. I mean, Thailand's got a great reputation in terms of taking care of people. There's that kind of strong community kind of thing. Philippines is another one. Lots of people retired to the Philippines. Yeah, so I think it's. I mean, it would just be, really take your time and think about your options and.
Yeah. So we don't have all the answers, but I think if Daniel or anybody else have more specific questions, or even just there's that same question, Retire Japan Forum is another good place to go for different opinions and to hear people's personal experiences as well.
Excellent. So I guess that takes us to the end of our show and the next session. So because of how February works, our next session is going to be on March 20th in exactly 4 weeks' time. Same bat time, same bat channel. And we're going to be talking to some special guests. So we're going to have the Donegans on. So some people might know who they are. They're basically a couple from the UK, and they retired a few years ago, I think. And they do kind of free courses and run a blog and so on about financial independence, about money and so on. And they're actually coming to Japan next month, which is why we're talking to them, basically. So we're actually going to be talking to them just before they come to Japan. So that'll be a chance for us to answer their questions about Japan and what they might want to do here. And we'll get to ask them about their life, how they reached financial independence, if they have any advice for people. They spend a lot of time helping people with this stuff, teaching people this stuff. So that might be a good chance for people to ask questions as well. So
what kind of sort of level is that? Like completely beginner, like tell me what this fire thing is, or more sort of advanced, if you're on the way here, here's how you can optimize your situation or something?
Well, I actually joined their course. They run this course every year called the Rebel Finance School.
Right.
And it's online. They do it from wherever they are. So they were doing it from Peru, I think, when I took it.
Oh,
from a
nice.
hotel
Wow.
in Peru or something. And it was very basic level. So it was basically, here's how you get started. Here's how they do a lot of kind of mindset stuff.
Right.
So I tend to focus on details. So especially for people in Japan, I'm like, this is a NISA account. This is how much money you can put into it. But they're like, how do we think about money? How do we, design a life that we want to live, kind of thing. So
I didn't
slightly
think
different approach.
mindset. Yeah, I didn't think mindset was that important, or kind of like out there, a bit airy fairy, until I read Your Money or Your Life, and then it's like, oh, okay, I'm getting it now. So
yeah,
there's to listen to.
It's like waking up from the Matrix, isn't it? So that book was actually that was my first kind of transformational money book, Your Money or Your Life, and it was just like, okay, so that's how you can think about this stuff.
Yeah.
There's a few books like that out there, and it's just a matter of finding the right ones for you, I think.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really interesting, and that's going to be this time next month, Monday again, March the 20th, I think you said. Same time, same place. No, not exactly the same place. The URL will be different.
That's true. If we can get the Zoom YouTube connection to work next time. Awesome. Well, thank you very much to anyone who's joined us, and see you next month.
Goodbye.